Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Peak Property Performance Podcast. Today's guest is David Stifter. David, before I read your intro, say hello.
Hey, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
David hails, we just learned, from outside of Boston, and I sit here today in Arvada, Colorado, not working from the office. We're Drew because the power's out. We're expecting 90-mile-an-hour winds for some crazy reason. The power's already out, so Drew's not going to join us today. It's just going to be David and I.
Solo.
So the theme of the show today is scaling real estate without breaking operations, why clean data and system ownership matter more than AI. So today's guest is David Stifter, a longtime real estate operator and technology leader who spent nearly 2 decades at Colonial Capital helping global portfolios scale while battling the same issue most owners still face: fragmented, inconsistent data. That's one of the reasons I got excited about you being here, David, is you came from the other side and created a point solution. So I'm glad to have you. But David's the founder of Predict AP, where he's focused on a very specific and very expensive, for those of us in the operational world know, operational choke point in real estate. And that's accounts payable and invoice coding, something a lot of us ignore and don't even want to talk about. So in the episode today, we're not here to sell software. We're here to talk about why accounts payable can teach every owner operator about data discipline, control of systems, and how to scale without becoming dependent on one person or one vendor to keep the building running. So David, welcome to Peak Property Performance. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you. We've had great conversations prior to hitting play, so I hope it keeps going.
That's why I asked you to be on the show, because it just seemed to hit. Like you talk about this 20-year-old data problem, and I think it just got even more dangerous in the AI era. Not to spin everything in AI. We're constantly talking about on this show data and digital. AI is adding fuel to that fire, but you have said clean, consistent data has been a fight forever, but the consequences are higher now. So what changed?
Yeah, so it's true. So, my background, again, I was the head of tech on the owner side for a long time. I'm an accountant by background, a geek at heart. And so I was a lazy accountant. So I'm always trying to automate things. And eventually that led to me, trying to solve these problems at scale. And heck, for 20 years ago, we're talking about clean data dictionaries, data controls, data.
Colony Capital, right? Private equity?
Yeah, Colony Capital, private equity, but also other CTOs, other accountants. I think it's something when folks in industry get together, there's always this kind of acknowledgement that, hey, we can always do better and have better data, more consistent data. And we're acknowledging that there's some level of loss of granularity and loss of consistency that exists in every company. How much that is varies company to company, but I think the point now is that the consequences of that maybe vary as well, where before it led to a lot more manual work, a lot more, issues. Maybe you weren't seeing, trends as well as you otherwise might, opportunities and risks and things like that. Now what people are seeing, and AI is definitely the shiny object of the moment, right? I think this one it's different than prior kind of buzzword shiny object things like blockchain and other things, where it's like, okay, that's a neat science experiment, but is there going to be an impact? I think we all know we're all using AI to different degrees, personal enablement and other things, but to do these things now, the data is that much more important. So kind of the entry level stakes for getting into the AI game for a lot of these use cases is good, consistent data. And with that, you can do a lot more. Without that, you're either not able to do it, or you're doing it in a way that you could be creating, bad outcomes where hallucinations happen a lot more, wrong answers happen a lot more, things like that. So the dirty reality of your data, could prevent you either from doing something, or it could be giving you wrong answers, right? If you have a bigger problem. So I think that's the consequence now, is that these things are not an option if you haven't dealt with the data.
Well, you and I are close enough to AI to understand what hallucinations mean, but people that are new to it or that are starting to use it for personal enablement, for instance, assume that it's a computer and it's right. And it's not. I tell everybody on our team, it's your thought partner, but you got to check it. Like, it doesn't.
Yeah, I had a recent example that really blew my mind. And I was trying to find someone that I knew what school they went to. It was someone I met at a conference, and I was like, we talked about his college, and he said that he did something with architecture there, and he moved into real estate, right? And so I looked up at this college and his interest, and I was trying to find it, and it had this article about an alumni who had gone on and started in architecture and moved to technology, and I was like, that's the guy. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And so in the article, I said, give me the outline of the article, and it had all this stuff, and then I went to go look for the article, and I couldn't find it, and I googled the title. I tried to find it a bunch of different ways, and I couldn't find any mention of it. Even on the alumni site, you have to be an alumni to log in and get it. And I was like, it's not coming up anywhere. And I thought I'd at least get a header. Like, I'm an hour into this now. This is the great thing about AI. Like, it took me 2 minutes to get this thing. I asked it, did you make this up? And it said, yes, I made it up, and I put it behind a password protected site, so it'd be difficult for you to verify. And I was like, wow, that's clever.
Which LLM Was that?
That was Grok.
Okay.
Grok
I
lied to
always
me.
ask
And
because
it
some of them are better at
Yeah,
it. Like
yeah.
I find Grok's better for research, at least right now. Claude's
Yeah.
better for computation, and Chat is better for generative. Like I don't mean
Yeah.
advanced general AI. I mean just content
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah, and there's this thing where I kept on asking, like, yeah, I wasn't finding the right thing, so I asked it a few times, then eventually it was like, "Oh, here's the thing exactly like you want it," and I was like, "Oh, perfect." But it was like, it really surprised me. It really surprised me, and I was like that and
Uh,
the thought about, like, doing it in a way that made it very difficult for me to verify that fact was like, that's pretty clever, you know?
I'm part of a mastermind group for executives with AI adoption, not selling AI, but using it. And they very often talk about how to, it's prompt engineering, but how to tell it you must give site sources and they can't be your own. And that's for that reason, because it always wants to satisfy us and
Mhm.
it's just not right. So, back to the topic at hand, right? Let's talk about
Yeah.
where commercial real estate owners get burned most often. Is it in missing data? Is it inconsistent naming? Is it tribal knowledge living in somebody's head? Or is it something else?
Well, I think all of these things are challenges, and I think if we look at what part of the opportunity AI is unlocking, if we're focusing on that, I think that tribal knowledge bit is really the most exciting part. Where a lot of these tasks we've wanted to think about centralization. So let's go back to on-site accounting or ARAP, collecting rent or paying bills,
Right.
and multifamily. Where the reason, and I think this is multifamily senior living, office industrial tend to be done centrally, right? But usually in those things, it's more of a services type thing, and it's done in the field because the knowledge is in the field. Not ideal. Like, what do you really want? I think AI is actually making us think more about what do we want people doing in their tasks, and like multifamily, we want them out on the grounds, talking to people, making the community aspect of it. A machine can't do that, right? But if you're in the back office for 8 hours a week, like going through paperwork,
Yeah.
you're not enhancing that community. But the reason was, well, it's hard to go train person downtown to know what you're doing in this local spot. And that's actually how Predictive kind of came about, where at Colony, we had 30 people led by this woman, Krissa, who'd been there for 30 years. She knew it all. She retired, and like that travel knowledge walked out the door. That's where I was like, oh my gosh, we're a multi-billion-dollar like investment firm, and like Krissa left, and like, we don't know the answers now. And that's
Wow.
was like, oh, that kind of created this thing. And so I think first off, cementing that knowledge within the organization, right? So when people leave, it doesn't walk out the door. Like, that's a big thing. But you're able to then, maybe that 8 hours a week turns into an hour a week, but then maybe you're able to make a bigger shift and say, you know what, let's get two central people. And then they can spend all their time with the people, and you're hiring a different type of person, right? So, oh, don't worry about that back office thing. And so where I think we're seeing is more of this operational office of the CFO back office type things, or the entry level type. We see chatbots, we see AI and other things like that, where it's like that initial communication, hey, these seem like good prospects, and then you have a person kind of get into the details of it. That enablement phase as well. And so I think that goes back to that kind of human travel knowledge part of your company's needs.
Well, you and I have talked about commercial real estate thrives on the fact that there's deal junkies, right? There's deal people doing deals, and they are a special kind of people, and every successful firm has them, right? Well, if not led by them, they have them, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how to let deal people do their deals without operations becoming a bottleneck. So go back to Colony.
Yeah.
What was the moment you realized that operations data wasn't just back office, it was the limiter on growth?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The deal people run real estate. They're the fighter pilots, the men and women that like
Make it
they
rain.
love talking cap rates.
Yeah.
They love talking markets. They love talking,
They make it
and
rain.
they
Like
and
they make it rain. Like it is the
make
reason
it
they
rain.
exist.
And you have to have a certain like,
Yeah.
something to like be, I'm gonna take that piece of dirt and build a tower. Like, that takes something. And that's where they all start, right? They all start from that tower, the property, whatever.
Right.
And then they wake up, they look behind them, it's like, well, I have 300 towers, right? Well, how do I run that? Because there's a certain aspect of just like, well, let's throw some bodies at it, we'll figure it out later. The figuring out later is where you hit these speed bumps of growth. So Colony started off as a small private equity firm in the 90s. Fast forward 20, 25 years, they have 5 public companies, 60 billion of AUM, and you don't get to that size without having operations to support it at scale, right? You're going to have thousands of accountants if you don't do that, and you can't go close deals and do it. And so I think as you mature as a company, you have to recognize that to do that effectively, with sustainability, you need to have systems and processes. Every company makes a realization there. So at Colony, one point there's this realization like, hey, we're barely making the deadlines for public company reporting. That's not sustainable. And so there was a huge investment, millions of dollars go into like, let's kind of blow up and remake this organization to work at the scale we're at and the scale we want to be. And that's where I think going from hobby, or not a hobby, but like an individual's passion for projects into a platform, a real estate operating platform, that jump is about operations and the systems needed to run a platform and not just chase that next deal.
Well, in the book, right, Peak Operating Performance, we dedicated a whole chapter to talk about, instead of the 5 C's, it's the sixth one, but it's champion. And it's how to have a digital and a data strategy and operate from the skybox rather than from the field. Because it's my experience that a lot of the deal junkies love the details, but they love the details of the deal. And then the operational details often get assumed they're going to be handled by, one of the firms that they either work with or hire. Like I'm not passing judgment. I'm just saying that it is so far beneath a deal person to figure out the details of AP, but they're responsible for it. So it comes with delegation and strategy. Like you can't just hire a firm and be done. There's accountability, there's reporting, there's checks and balances. And we speak to all of that because it is such a common problem, especially in fast growing firms.
You're not making the deal until you sell it, right?
Yeah.
And that what you're exiting at, that NOI at the exit, right? The market cap's going to do what the market cap does. You can't control that. What you can control is how efficient are you being during that ownership period. And you're absolutely right. Like third parties, like there's reasons that people like third parties, but there's a cost too, right? There's a cost to having stuff. You could be fully vertically integrated within your firm, right? There's a cost to that. It's expensive. It can be more efficient to have third parties, but no one's going to have as much ownership as your own firm does of these assets, and understanding the limitations of those, and how do you take the benefits of economies of scales and the efficiencies of third parties, but have systems and controls to identify the risks and the opportunities that are coming, right? Because if you're fully divorcing yourself from those things, well, you're going to go try to sell that building and you're going to be in for a shock as far as like, oh, my construction management fees have been out of control, and my rents aren't at market, and deferred maintenance is a huge thing here. Well, those are all problems. And so you want to have ways to understand, at least to be aware of the compromises being made or the decisions or the timing of those things. And good systems and good access to data can let you do that. I think another challenge you face is that once you start to get big, you can't go dig into the nuance of every single deal and look at every single bill paid, right? You kind of look at this layer. And another thing I've seen is as far as good data, like I've seen this trend where people book to where there's open budget. They don't want to explain a variance, So, well, we had to replace a bunch of appliances and multifamily, and it didn't snow. Well, I want to put those in snow removals. I don't have a variance. I'm on budget. Unless you're digging into those nuanced details, you're never aware of that, right? And so it's like that can be difficult at scale too, to understand where things are trually happening.
Well, we don't sell anything on the show, but we're a big advocate of the owner having control. So is Predict AP solution, and again, don't go sell it, but is it possible for the owner to have control and still use third property management?
Yeah, and it's interesting. We have clients who are actually third parties, right?
Okay.
Because they have a challenge too, where they're a margin business where they're trying to provide a high level of service, but not having 6-figure property managers, asset managers on site doing this type of work. So it's hard to have that right mix.
I've seen third party where granted in the office, and I mean one of the big five, right? In the office downtown, wherever that NFL city is, there's a half a dozen people sitting there, but they're billing a lot of money to their employer to handle what is a very expensive overhead for that little property that they're managing. Yeah. It's really hard to understand the math sometimes, and it's an owner's problem. Maybe they delegate it, maybe they don't, but the data is still sitting outside the owner's view. And then that's what baffles me.
That's a big thing is I think owners, just from my own experience, there's this tension where, as far as where the data lives, let's talk about that because
we're a big believer the owner should have all their data, period.
The owner should own your data, right? Now, the third parties, there's very logical reason why they want to control it. Hey, be on our system, be on our Yardi, be on our Yardi.
They can use the data, but they shouldn't own it and control it.
Right. So it's like easy for them to train people. It's always consistent. Like there's lots of reasons they want to do it. And it's truly a barrier to exit, right? It's a big shift to take all that from theirs to someone else. As an owner, if you can, now it's hard if you're a small company, but for bigger companies, you should try to own your data and have service providers or employees working in your system, right? And that's there. So, hey, how can the tools help with that? Well, you are seeing this first generation of very specific narrow deep tools that are addressing a specific issue. And we talked about knowledge specific issues, which are going to help that third party. Imagine you're a third party again, that you got a new client. Here's 100 buildings, 300 vendors, 1,000, like that's hard to learn all that. Well, tech can help with that, right? Or internal, if you're vertically integrated, tech can help with that and provide that consistency. Because I think another part of this is that in organizations with a lot of people, there's just human inconsistency. We see that as well when we're looking at, people ask us all the time. Actually, just before this, someone asked me, "How accurate are you?" I was like, "Well, how accurate are you?"
I like to say,
AI is
AP invoice coding is a microcosm of the complexity of commercial real estate. And it's a serious NOI lever and an ROI if you invested in that system. But it's a whole little micro economy, microcosm, whatever the right word is there, of
Yeah,
commercial real
it is.
estate. So why is invoice coding so uniquely hard in commercial real estate?
So here's why, is because there's two parts. So first is the way commercial real estate is owned has a lot of complexity about entity structure, right? You got CMBS, you have, these loan deals, you have the funds themselves, how you create these funds, you have, blockers, tax luck blockers, and all this kind of SPVs and all this kind of legal structuring around the ownership. It's complicated. Colony, we had 12,000 entities. It's crazy. Colony didn't pay anything. It's all, appropriately allocated where it should go. But good luck trying to navigate those org charts of like, oh,
Yeah.
it says Colony, but well, really it's this, Colony 2016-V Lux sub
Well,
A
yeah, you're
entity.
not even diving down into CAM pools and triple net, et cetera yet, and carve
Exactly. So,
outs.
so on the entity structure is hard. Then that thing what you just mentioned on the bottom side is, okay, is it in the CAM pool or not? Well, okay, well, generally it is, but well, actually Google is this tenant here and they don't want to pay for common area maintenance. They cut that out of the lease. So it's like, well, but it's over, but we weren't cleaning the window. We replaced the window. So that's capitalized, or. So the nature of the property level expenses is different for office where you have CAM and other things. Family is different. Industrial is triple net. Under construction is something totally different with
Yeah.
CIP, all that stuff. So you have incredible complexity around the day-to-day operating, and it can vary building by building. It can vary tenant by tenant. And so you have thousands and thousands of permutations of how a particular bill could be paid. Vendors do many, many things multiplied by, hey, here's all the thousands of possible entities it could do and all the bank accounts associated with those things. You multiply those things together and there's hundreds of thousands of permutations. And that is an incredibly challenging thing where like, I think the AP people in the world do not get enough credit. It's not the highest paid job in the world, but they know an incredible amount of information
Mhm.
to be really good at this because it is a high pressure, every day it's coming at you and you have to be right type of thing
They
because
are
those tenants are
I call them
auditing
Sherlock
you.
Holmes. They have to do a lot of investigation because they get a bill.
Yeah.
Or even worse, they just get an automated bill, like it dinged, and there's maybe
Yeah.
15 characters. Like, what is this for? And they have to go find it out and code it accurately. And there's a lot of people screaming at them the whole time. So relative to accounts payable, say I have a portfolio, this is all theoretical, and it's sloppy and I want to make it good. So what does good look like relative to AP? Is it speed? Is it accuracy? Is it auditability? Is it reduction in costs, reporting? Is it all those? Just give me some
I
examples
think,
of what you see in the
yeah.
first year of somebody trying to tackle their ugly AP.
Yeah, so for me, good deals, ultimately, the methods don't matter, AI doesn't matter, and none of that matters. What matters is you're doing the job right, and by job right, it's you're appropriately you're paying your bills timely, and you're doing it accurately, right?
Mhm.
Your CAM pool reflects what it should reflect, no more, no less. Tenants are being billed what they should be billed. They're recovering what you should recover. You're not having leakage on that and all that. So that's what good is. So are you doing the job correctly? And then on top of that, it's, well, how efficiently are you in doing that job correctly? And so, folks can do this. You throw bodies at it, you'll get it done, but it's extremely expensive to have the appropriate level of staffing for that. And the other hard part is this stuff is not every single day is a nice equal distribution of invoices. Like, no, here's the first of the month. Here's your, 2,000 invoices. Well, you staffed up for that. Now it's like,
Well,
that's a hard thing.
David, that's why
Yeah.
we
So
bill
tech.
on the 15th. Right there.
Exactly, exactly. So tech can scale up, right? So
Yeah.
we're in a great golden age of compute where like, oh, just go buy Amazon Compute for 3 minutes. It can handle the 2,000 invoices and goes through. And so, good is doing it well, doing it accurately, doing it consistently, as good or, if not better than, folks that have been on the job, but doing it in a way that's very efficient. That means, hey, 30 seconds later, it's in your system fully coded as opposed to, person where it takes 5 minutes per. And then it's like, well, then your staff, what are they doing? Right. Cause it's not like, first off, you need people, right? AI is not, as we just talked about, infallible. So you need that human set of eyes, which is where I think AP is a great use case because got great structures, great patterns. You still have a human in the loop, right? It's saying, no, we bought this building, we sold that one, like feedback mechanism. But then you're talking about, payment discounts or, ACH, getting off checks, right? People still write checks, getting onto that, right? Understanding, is there opportunities for your bulk spend, being efficient in our procurement process as opposed to AP data processors. So for me, that's what the vast majority of things that are consistent and have a pattern can be automated. Right. And
Mhm.
then you have ways of being proactive on risks and opportunities and making sure there's consistency with coding at a granular level as you can. I think another thing about data and good data and data consistency is not losing granularity. A great example of that might be a utility bill where $10,000 electric bill comes in. Utilities are their own
Mm-hmm.
situation.
Yeah.
It's like that you pay the utility company because they will turn your lights off, and you do not want that. But $10,000 electric bill comes in, $1,000 late fee. Maybe it hits your system. And by the way, we looked, and this happens a lot. $11,000 of electric. Okay, well that's actually a bit of a problem. Yeah, technically it is, but really it's 10,000 of electric, 1,000 late. Because maybe in aggregate, that's $20,000 a month of late fees across all these vendors across your portfolio. The CFO probably wants to know there's $20,000 a month going out the door of a controllable expense, as opposed to, oh, there's a little variance in electric, like
And that
must have been a hot
expense
July.
legitimately is not CAM. Yeah.
Exactly, and it's not CAN. And so if someone audits that and you've passed it through, it's like, well, now you got multiple
You
problems.
got a problem.
So
Like,
that's an example of like, you get why someone would do that. They're trying to get through their day and all that, but it's inaccurate. So even that data consistency problem goes into like levels of granularity. And there's lots of examples like that where you need to be very granular in order to truly expose what the issue is or the opportunity is.
here on the show and just in life in general, of course, it's fun to talk about the wins, but we also like to share horror stories. And I got this one firsthand. I won't even tell you where the building is. It's 175,000 square foot building. It traded hands earlier this year. It's a client. The new property manager and the owner sat down with us and said, because we believe digital infrastructure should be an asset that generates income. I mean, it's just at the core. Technology shouldn't be an expense. It should be a capitalized asset, and you should expect a return. If there's no return on it, then you shouldn't do it. It's that simple. It's really not that simple. The baseline is that simple. Doing it's a lot harder. But they said this digital infrastructure is losing us money. We need to cut it back. We need to change it because it came to the end of its capital period, which was 10 years. And I said, well, this is what we show as income. And the previous property manager and the previous owner were not billing it accurately, and they were not recouping. The percentage of it was CAM, and the rest of it was tenant opt-in. Like tenants had signed things saying we wanted this, so it was not CAM. And they were putting it all to CAM and not billing the tenant. So not only were they making the owner eat most of the CAM because there was a large amount percentage-wise of common area, the tenants had said, I will buy this, and that tenant said, I will buy that, and they weren't billing it. If they billed it, they billed it at cost, not at price. So it was on a 175,000 square foot building, it was $78,000 a year. And they couldn't, it was past the recoup period. They audited it and they couldn't go recover it. So they lost for a year and a half. They lost $78,000 a year because of a billing issue. Applicable. I mean, they paid for it. They didn't collect it.
Yeah.
They didn't know they weren't collecting it until they audited it, and they didn't audit it until it traded hands. So imagine how much money's falling through the cracks if you look at the AP and say, is this recoverable? Is this CAM? Is it an expense that goes to income? There's different categories. But simply by applying the process you said, I think most owners would find a lot of NOI impact, one way or the other. Top line, bottom line reductions, something, but especially in the office environment. I'm not talking specifically about apartments because there's not a lot of CAM you could pass through.
Yeah, retail, office.
Mixed use, retail,
some
office
industrial.
is what I'm talking about. Even apartments have some mixed use on the first floor, a lot of them.
Yeah.
You got the coffee shop, the golf simulator, the bar, the whatever.
And that's the thing is like, the first building you buy, you probably are on top of every single bill and every single thing. And then, 2, 3 in, like you start to take that, you can't look at it all and you lose that. But, I find this out as I've transitioned from like, running this thing to running a company, like oftentimes you assume, stuff is, you talked about something and it was in place there and maybe 2 years later, it's not, right? And it's something that it's hard. You don't realize, that things shifted so much because you can't be in the details of every single thing. And that's where you need good process and controls. At my company, we talk a lot about thinking like an accountant. I think one thing that's come out of my career in kind of fintech or, accounting tech at real estate is having controls or backstops to give you comfort that what you think is true, right? So the way, we talked about the engineers, you can't just say, go to the ERP and give me all the vendors because it doesn't always work. It doesn't always, it makes sense. If you're coming from Apple where like you're working on this at scale stuff and like, it said, give me all the vendors. Should give me all the vendors. It's like, well, did it? Or did it give you half of them in timeout and you don't even know it, right? And so that's part of that culture I've tried to create is, hey, we need to have a reason why we believe what we believe other than it makes sense, right? We have to have a control. We actually go look at it independently and get some comfort. I think that's what all of these things, maybe your process is good, but do you have this other tech that's telling you that? Or maybe your tech is good, but do you have a way to check that, right? You need to have processes and controls to give you some comfort that what you're seeing is real. Or what you're missing is are our leases being entered correctly? Are we recovering things correctly? Are renewal rights in there, right? Rights and options and all this stuff. Like lots of this stuff, I think, is not followed up as well as it should be.
Well, not just in the book, but in our daily practice. We strongly believe in owning your own systems as an operator. And I don't mean each piece of software that you might be buying. Like you're not going to go write a PMS, for instance, but your systems, your processes, things like your SOPs, things like that. And we very staunchly believe in no vendor lock-in. So as a best practice for owners. And you earlier on the show said the best practice, quote unquote, is the owner owns the system, right? The owner owns the data and the third parties work inside it. So why is that still so rare in commercial real estate? I don't see it in any other industry. And I've been in a lot of industries in my career. Anywhere I go, I'm an entrepreneur. I love to study other businesses. I don't see this anywhere else where they let outside companies in, put systems in they can't use, and those companies can mine data from their customers. Blows my mind.
I think it has a lot to do with the size and power of the providers, right? And when you're starting, you're small. And when you're making these initial decisions, you're small and they're big, and you're trying to chase the next deal, and you just have to deal with this thing, and you don't care because it doesn't matter at that point. And you're like, yeah, I'll use company's X system, right? And then when it does matter, it's like, well, okay, now we have a 2-year, $3 million project to move it off there. Well, let's just keep it going on there, right? And so it takes a big act of will to do that. You're going to have a lot of pressure from those providers that you're going to rely upon, right? There's still going to be some level of help you need to scale, and they're disinclined to do that for good reason. Like, again, it makes sense from their perspective. That would be incredibly hard to have 6,000 standard operating procedures for 6,000 customers on, that's hard. I get that, and so that's part of the challenge. And my journey at Colony, like we moved from that thing, but it took it took pain. It was terrible, years and lots of money to get everything onto one system. And then we had some providers who wouldn't. And we said, it's been great, but we're going to move on. And some providers, we were the first one they did it for, right? Some fund admins or things like that, where we made a case. But we also, I will say this, we also committed to investing to make our systems very effective, right? So the way we did payments, or not even on the AP ingestion and coding side, but more on like the bank integration side and the automatic bank recs. Like we did lots and lots of work on all these little friction-filled parts of it to help them. And so giving tools where it's, truly it's a, win-win, where you have to be, you have to be kind of gracious and reasonable in these negotiations. So we invested a lot into training their people, into showing this, into enhancing the systems, all that, to give them a really great system. And then there was kind of a win-win, right? We trained their people, we did all this stuff. If we did none of that, we just gave them a terrible system and didn't let them run wild. That's kind of unfair too. I think that's part of the reason is it's like, when you make the decision initially, you're probably not big enough to force any change. You have to accept what you accept. And is it really worth the pain later on?
So how does I do use the word system, owning the process, owning the data, translate into leverage, both operationally and financially? Like that is why we're stuck as an industry. But I talked about a bad case. Let's give them the really good case. How does investing in this, both time, money, energy, people, etc., give them a benefit operationally and financially?
Yeah. So operationally, I think the first benefit you see is you get away, so folks who usually have some sort of level of consolidations, system, where I'm taking all my, do my monthly upload, these are my trial balances, right? So you create this terrible task of reconciliation every period, right? We have our top of the pyramid financials. On a third-party service provider 1 is giving me my 32 trial balances. Provider 2 gives me my 27 trial balances. Oh, shock. Our beginning balance isn't the same as our ending balance. Let's figure out why. And so you create this, like, every period you're chasing your tail as far as what changed, why, and what the root cause of this. Because again, the trial balances can tell you that you got to go back to the details and do that. And so number one, if it's all in that same system, you're not going to have any kind of break between your reality and their reality of these things. That enables much quicker close cycles, much less need for oversight and review for these variances that are inevitable. That's number one. Number two is it gives you optionality on those third-party providers you use, right? If you own the system, it's on your system, and they're not doing the job, well, it's very easy to move from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
If they're owning the system, you're talking about that painful move thing. Let's do an ERP conversion. That's rough. So I think that it gives you options on that. And then the last part is it allows continued work towards systems that are going to directly address the parts of that, the things that are going to most affect your particular business, right? Because you're building things on reporting, or building things on, tenant renewal process, or building things around leasing. Or like you're going to be able to continue to invest and build in things that are directly affecting your business, where I think the incentive for third parties is more on like the back office operations side. And so at the end of that road is a system that's should be really aligned with your business challenges and objectives. And it's hard to, you're going to have a good general generic system from another provider, but it's never going to be as particular to your needs as one that you're kind of building and maintaining if you have good staff. So you kind of have this road to better and better and better for your firm as opposed to this kind of generally good, but that's where it sits and that's where it ends.
Well, I've enjoyed the conversation today because I know we dove into AP a couple of times, but from 100,000 feet in the concepts, and especially what you just answered, that question has nothing to do with AP. It has to do with any system, any process, any burden, whether that be financial, time, process, efficiency, whatever, to a commercial real estate firm of any size. So that is why I wanted to have you on the show. I think you and I could talk about some of this stuff forever, but I don't think people wanted to listen forever as much as they might. So at the end of every show, we try to let our listeners know more about the guest. So we have what we call the extra floor. In commercial real estate, it's the extra floor. It's just 5 questions, quick answer, let them know about you. So we're not talking about the industry. We're talking about David, right? Yeah. What's a book or a podcast that has shaped how you think?
I'll say the first one that comes to mind is Learn to Earn with Peter Lynch.
I like that one.
Thinking about investments and understanding. I read it when I was a teen, and it really opened my eyes to the world of finance and mystifying it, where like it was a very accessible book, and it really kind of led me on this path of being inquisitive and looking about, open your eyes to see what the world's showing you, and you can learn from that. So I think that was a really good book that I read a long time ago.
We obviously learned from it if you left private equity to jump into the entrepreneurial world and start this company.
I don't know. It's at times in my journey, I was questioning my judgment. And I have 2 small kids. I'm like, let's leave this managing director job and be a prop tech founder. But so far so good.
I love it. I just love it. So that's how I've lived for 30 years, is in the founder side. So I think you'll do very well and enjoy it just as much. What is the best piece of career or life advice that you've ever received?
The best piece of advice, I think, is keeping your foot on the gas. And I think the biggest challenge for careers is at any point, maybe this is less on the entrepreneurial side, but if we go in the office track and professional track, there's points where you deserve to be promoted, you deserve to get that next step. And it's very rare, for whatever reason, it's rare that you get what you deserve when you deserve it. And so you can rightfully so feel like, I'm not getting the attention or appreciation or rewards I'm getting. So I'm going to start taking my foot off the gas. And here's the reality of that, is that no one's going to notice. No one's going to mention it. Maybe for months, maybe for years, you can kind of coast and your foot gets off the gas, and then they will notice, right? And then you are not ready for that next thing, and you don't deserve it. You kind of find yourself living in the village where you're no longer like truly pushing yourself and truly accelerating and learning and all that. I think the hardest thing, it's not the smartest people that are successful long-term. It's not, what it is the most consistent people. So on those days when you want to take your foot off the gas, like keep your foot on. I think that's the biggest thing, is just keep learning, keep challenging yourself. And eventually the things you deserve, you'll get, if you keep on it.
I love it. Wake up living in the village. It's like wake up in the matrix. Okay.
Exactly.
Number 3, what's one habit or practice that consistently makes you more effective?
So for me, being focused on health. So I was, 2 years ago, I was almost 300 pounds. I was very heavy, and, I've got a 9-year-old boy, and he's like, Dad, why can't you play with me? And it was one of those arrows to the heart where I really took a look in the mirror, and I realized back to putting more and more time into career and all this, it's like, well, another hour of work. And at some point, those hours of work become detrimental, and you're doing worse for the overall time. And I made a decision, to commit to being healthy as as important as every other aspect, because it affects every other aspect. And for me, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was something I did a long time ago, and I started back up. My son does it, so it's something we can do together. But hey, I do a 6 a.m. class 3 days a week, and when the alarm goes off at 5:30, I am not a morning person. I don't like it at all, but I have a choice every single time. I'm like, ooh, I could be cozy in bed, or I can make a choice to get up, and I have that choice every time. It's not any easier, but I've lost about 100 pounds, and I feel great, and I enjoy it, and it's an activity where one of the few things where I'm not thinking about work or other stuff when I'm on the mat, trying not to get choked out. And by the way, at all of the events, we're doing a jiu-jitsu thing called the rent rollers, where we open it up to people who've never done it before. With the last one we did was at Optech. We had Adam Wazinski, who's the current world champ, teaching a class for people who've never done it. So take a look on LinkedIn for rent rollers if you want a free experience with someone really interesting in the jiu-jitsu world for a healthy activity.
Oh, I commend you, because 100 pounds is a lot. I commend you for waking up in the morning. I never felt bad leaving leaving the gym, there's 1,000 times I do not want to go in. So I understand the
Yeah.
struggle and share it with you. It's not about me, it's about you, but I'm overwhelmed by that answer. Wow, 300 pounds and you made the choice. It is part of our company culture at OpticWise to be family first and health first. That trumps any schedule, anything that's on the docket. Like it just, I mean, I hate to say it, it trumps customers, and customers get it because they respect the way we respect our team. So we disclose it, and I encourage more companies to do the same. So good for you. We could probably do a whole show about what you just said. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
You already answered this, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Early bird or night owl?
I'm not an early bird.
I know.
I'm a night owl.
You're a night owl. Okay.
So I'm an early bird by choice.
days a week.
I'm yeah, and then I go on the weekend for an open mat, but that's a little later. So I am a night owl, absolutely. You know, I get my second win at like 10:30. But I've been trying to even prioritize sleep. You know, being a night owl, hey, even though I like it, I know I need to get recover and get sleep in. So it's something you know, I gotta beat my nature on that side too, as far as getting sleep I need.
Well, our listeners know how adamant I am about how sleep is not underrated. So, hey, when you're
Yeah, I
not,
got my Whoop here keeps me on track. So
Yep.
it tells me when I'm being naughty.
you like the Whoop? I don't have one. I have other devices. So
I will say actually for sleep, it's helped me get much more consistent, and I can tell my kids like, hey, you destroyed my sleep score last night when you came into bed and cuddle with me. You know,
I love it.
I can't say no to my yeah. So yeah.
get them involved in it too. I love the fact that you're working out with them too. I am
Yeah,
I am fortunate that my 31-year-old has been working out with me for 15 years, and we still do it every Saturday morning. And every weekend there's somebody who walks up at the gym and says, you know, how long have you guys been doing this? Because we clearly know each other's routine. And it's just like,
yeah, that's
and then
awesome.
we'll go get something to eat. Like it's awesome. So
I love that. I love routines with the kids.
yeah, well, that might be the next answer. It might not. But when you're not working, what do you love to do that recharges you?
So jujitsu, I think number one, just from, you know, it can be really hard for people who are business oriented to ever truly stop thinking about it, right? Like even though I'm watching a movie or heck, talking with you, like I'm really paying attention to you, but 5% of me is like, okay, what's my next meeting? You have these things going on. And I'll say, you know, and I know for some people it's running, some people it's swimming, some people it's, you know, where you just like get in the moment and let your mind stop for a bit. For me, when I'm, you know, jujitsu is tough. Like, you know, you're wrestling with someone else and they're trying to choke you, you're trying to choke them or break their arm or whatever. And it's like, it takes all my attention. It makes me feel really dumb. It's hard. It's a real mental game, but for me, it like recharges, you know, kind of gets my mind there. That's the part for me, like getting my mental stuff reset a little bit. But then, you know, spending time with the kids. I love trying to be creative with my boys and you know, my wife, and doing, you know, trips. Like I like to make memories. I'm doing a trip, ski trip with my boy coming up in January. So like making memories with the family. That's really what I enjoy. And a little reading on the side too. I love reading good books.
Love it. I read yesterday, speaking of reading, the human brain has 70,000 thoughts a day. So to try and process all those is impossible. But to free up your mind and let it do its thing is beautiful. So, hey, we always put these in the show notes as well. But for those people listening only, how could people get a hold of David should they want to?
Yeah, so I try to be active on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, I generally don't post about my company. I post about things I'm reading, interesting stories, all of that. So check me out on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me. Heck, if you want to learn about jujitsu, I made a LinkedIn group called Rent Rollers. I'm trying to get people together to do that. And check out the Predict AP blog. You know, Predict AP, we're all about invoice coding. We're the best at this one thing we do, and you know, feel free to reach out in any of those spots. You know, send me an email at dstifter@PredictAP.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And to all the listeners, be sure to follow, like, subscribe, all those other things. Recommend it. If you want to be on the show or have somebody you want to be on the show, let us know. We always answer every inquiry. And thank you again. We'll see you on the next show. And more than likely, Drew will be here with me then. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bill.